The eCom Seller Summit was created to prove that with the right tools and training, anyone and everyone can make money in e-commerce. So many people want to try their hand at e-commerce, selling on eBay, Amazon, Shopify, and more, but they're afraid they won't be successful. This summit will show you that there's many ways to do e-commerce, and there are many platforms you can explore because e-commerce really has no limits. It really can pay your bills, and e-commerce never sleeps. There's nothing like waking up to profits from getting sales all night long. My name is Nicole Whitlock, and this is the eCom Seller Summit.
Hey everyone, I am so excited to be here at E-commerce Seller Summit. My name is Kyle Hamar, and in this presentation, I'm going to talk about the 4 things that you must have to scale your Shopify store. So a little bit about me. I'm a digital marketer. I started in marketing doing email and paid traffic, and I worked in lead gen for higher education for a long time. Got involved in e-commerce about 5-6 years ago. Have two brands, Lita Art Supply and Old Boy Ceramic Bearings, 7-figure Amazon seller. Also e-commerce business coach with my partner Jason Miles. That's a picture of us at actually Udemy's headquarters in San Francisco. And we've taught courses on Udemy. I have over 17,000 students. Jason has even more than that. He's been on it a little bit longer. I'm also been an adjunct professor of online marketing at Northwest University. I live just outside of Seattle, Washington, in the town of Redmond, and my big Ys are right there on the screen. That's my wife and my daughter. I originally am from Astoria, Oregon, which is where they filmed the movie The Goonies and Free Willy. So if you've seen those movies, you've seen where I spent most of my time growing up. My background is in IT. I was a computer networking guy for a long time before I decided to get out of that career, and then fell in love with marketing and e-commerce. A fun fact about me is that I was in an improv comedy troupe in college. So, shockingly, if my presentation isn't at all funny, that would probably be a reason why I'm still not doing improv comedy. So, with that, now you may be wondering, if you're trying to start up your Shopify site, you might feel like Kevin Costner in The Field of Dreams. If you build it, he will come. However, just because you build a Shopify site and build your store doesn't mean that traffic automatically occurs, right? And that's really the biggest question that we get when we're talking with coaching clients and helping students with their Shopify stores, is like, how do I get traffic? And it makes sense because you have to have traffic in order to scale, and in order to get customers and sales and all the things that are associated with running your store. Traffic's important. So just building the site doesn't necessarily mean that your site will be successful. Because your customer is going to come to your store expecting one thing, like in The Field of Dreams. His dad shows up and he's like, "Is this heaven?" And then he's like, "No, it's Iowa." And part of the job of scaling and getting everything dialed in is going to be setting clear expectations for your customer and making sure that they are getting what they expect. And really that comes down to asking the fundamental question, are you getting the right customers to your store? And I think the goal of this presentation is really the 4 things that you must have in order to scale your Shopify store. And it really comes down to nailing these 4 fundamentals that will help you align your brand, your products to your customers, and the things you really have to think of at a high level. Now, I'm going to throw a ton of information at you over the course of this presentation, so you feel free to watch this again. Absolutely, I would encourage you to get the All Access Pass if you want to get access to all the recordings from all of the speakers. There's going to be a lot of speakers that are going to get very tactical. I'm going to try and pull it back a level and give you a strategic overview. Now, some of this stuff will be new to you. Some of the stuff will be familiar. Maybe you've heard it before. But my goal is to encourage you to start thinking about these 4 fundamental things that are going to be required for you to scale. So if you're starting to get some sales happening and you're like, I need to really start growing this Shopify store, or really want to, we got to make sure you have these fundamentals understood and start to work on in your business. Now, here they are. Here are the 4 fundamental things. You have to have a proven product or business model. And we'll jump into that, each one of these things. You need to have a clear value proposition for your website. You need to have an optimized store, so an optimized Shopify store. And you need to understand this one little formula, because this formula right here is really going to be your best friend as you scale. And it's probably the most important formula in e-commerce, and that is your CAC. It has to be lower than your LTV. And what that stands for is your customer acquisition cost has to be lower than the lifetime value of your customer. And we're going to break this down, and I'll explain to you what to do, what this means, and what are some practical tactics you can take in order to change those numbers. But first, ultimately, when it comes down to the customer, if your customer's asking, is this heaven? And you're telling them, no, this is Iowa, there's a bit of a disconnect. And Sam Walton has a famous quote, so there's only one boss, and that's the customer. He can fire everybody in the company from the chairman on down simply by spending his money somewhere else. And that's what we're trying to avoid. When you're scaling your store, you want your customer to spend their money on your store, at your store, on your products. So let's start with the product itself. This is the fundamental thing. And this kind of goes without saying. Your question, of course, duh. In order to scale, you have to start with the product. But oftentimes we do gloss over this step, and I really want to emphasize it. If you don't have a validated product or business model, and what I mean by a business model is that a lot of times we're focused on the physical product side, but business models can be incorporated in a lot of different ways, right? And what I mean by validated business model is that are you doing something that is proven, for one, and two, that you're proving to yourself that you can execute on. Because with Shopify, you could look at a lot of different things. You could sell your own unique created products. You can do wholesale. You can do drop shipping. You can do print on demand. All of those are valid business models, but which business model do you have skill set in and that you're proving success in? So you need to validate your business model and or your product. And if this isn't happening, then do not pass go. You will not collect $200 like in Monopoly. This is a fundamental step. And there's going to be a lot of trainings even in this summit that are going to help you to get to that point. But if you're not at that point yet, you can't scale. Because ultimately, when you start to unlock this, you realize what Gary Halpert is famous for saying, and you're giving the people what they want. This is a famous quote from a class that he taught. He's a world famous copywriter, one of the best to ever do it. And he was asking his class, he's like, if we were going to compete against each other at selling burgers, what is the one thing that I would have or I would want? And if you gave it to me, I would totally beat you at every single level. And I would crush you in sales. And they went around the classroom and he asked them, and they're like, oh, the best burgers, or, some sort of pricing that's the best pricing. And he went through and he listened to everyone's ideas, and he said, no. He's like, I myself only want one advantage. And if you give it to me, I'm gonna beat you all. And he said, and what advantage did the class? They asked him, what is it? He's like, the only advantage I simply want is a starving crowd. So if you put even the worst burger in the world in front of a starving crowd, of course, they're going to be like just beating down your door in order to get access to that, because that's exactly what they really, really, really want. And thinking about that, how you align your product and business to your audience, to your customer, is really important. And so a proven product or business model is doing that ultimately. So when a product succeeds, it's not because it creates its own demand. It's because it taps into pre-existing demand. And this is really important because, and this is important even if you're on your own Shopify, if you're looking to launch products on Amazon, it's a little bit harder there, but there's pre-existing demand built in those platforms and not enough supply, not enough products that are available to that. And so if you tap into that, you can find success and winners for products on marketplaces like Amazon or Etsy. But particularly with your own store, you want to be solving a problem and something that people are looking for. And you can't spend your way or hack your way into a problem solution fit or product market fit. It just doesn't really work like that. You can't force it to occur. And you don't really want to, because you're going to end up trying to spend a lot of money and time and energy trying to create a market if it doesn't already exist. So first and foremost, reverse engineer that process and really think about your customer and what they want and need, and solve that problem first. So how do you kind of do this? So you want to answer these questions. Does your product truly solve a problem your audience wants, or is it just a nice to have it? Because you don't want to have a product that's, oh, that's kind of cool. That'd be cool to have, maybe later I'll get it. But does it really make something easier for them? Does it give them a faster or better result than your competitor? Does it give them a feeling? If they own your product, does it produce a specific feeling? That's why luxury brands and fashion brands sell how they sell and why they sell. It's because they're trying to invoke a specific feeling or lifestyle in the mind of their customer. So how do we know when we started to get a product that's validated? Here's some ways you can test and validate your product. You first and foremost, you want to share your idea and get feedback. That's really important. It's like oftentimes we get ideas and we don't really even talk about it with anybody, and that's an important step. Do a beta launch with a target audience, like find a Facebook group or find a group that's similar. Maybe you have a shared audience and you can partner up with somebody who already has a product or service, and you can get access to their Facebook group, or you can just reach out and do outreach to. There's tons of Facebook groups out there that you could do a beta launch or do a target audience in, and do some product research and validate it that way. You can test your product on a marketplace. Now, this is the one that usually most people will go through this process with. And that is, you want to test it by launching it on Amazon or Walmart or Etsy, and then see if you can get results. If you're getting positive feedback on your product through good customer reviews and sales and actual real revenue, you're going to be on the right path. Or you can try a crowdfunding campaign. So that's another avenue that you can test to validate your product. We had a coaching client who at one point launched a crowdfunding campaign, I think he raised $1.5 million in his crowdfunding campaign, and really just launched his business. He validated his product that he was bringing to the market that was new. So he validated not only his product, but his product market fit, his ideal customer. And through that process, he actually said that he made refinements to the product and that early stage and that launch stage that made the product even so much better. So again, it goes back to sharing your idea and getting feedback. And you can do that through beta launches with sort of like a customer feedback type launch, or you can actually launch it on a retail marketplace like Amazon, or try a crowdfunding campaign. And then ways you can validate your market, because the other thing you need to do is validate not only your product, but your audience as well. And if you have customers already or potential customers, use surveys. So survey those customers, send out a survey and ask your customers questions that give you business intelligence about why they bought from you, why they like your products. Product reviews are a great way that helps validate the market, similar to sales to validate the product. But you can do that. You can run some surveys, do research online. There are millions of Facebook groups. Reddit has multiple subreddits that you can on every single topic, or look at other online forums and just see what people are talking about in that market. What issues are they having? What questions are they having about your competitors' products even? The other way that you can look at this is just see what people are searching for as a whole. Look at Google Keyword Planner. Just Google some of the questions yourself, and do the Google searches that your customers would be using. Look at the Google Trends tool to see if it's trending up or trending down or flatlined for growth. And then also there's another tool called Uber Suggest by Neil Patel. And you can get access to it, I believe, for free, and really see sort of what keyword questions are there and the different size of the search volume of those keywords. And so there's a lot of tools like that to help you do research around that. But really understanding your client or your customer and who they are and what they want is critical to validating your market and product fit. And then the other way is ask the question, who's the biggest competitor in the space? How big are they? Try to look up their sales volume. Try to do research on their website to see if how much traffic they're getting, and really go through that process. There are tools like spyfoo.com or SimilarWeb that you can get access to, and some have free trials and stuff like that, just to kind of see where their traffic is coming from to your competitors' sites. And then you sort of begin to reverse engineer how they're doing that process. So one other thing I just really wanted to stress on validating your product is make sure you share that idea. Talk with your peer groups. And you might be like, well, people might steal my idea. But the reality is that most people, 99.999% of them, aren't going to be as committed to your idea and your business that you're going to be launching as you are. If you're committed to it, feel free to share that idea, because what's going to happen, and this is a great quote by John Saddington, who's a successful serial entrepreneur, is because you're going to get so much more value by sharing it because of the feedback you're going to get, right? A refined idea is a much more mature idea that only really starts when you start to share it. You get the feedback, you get that guttural feedback from people, especially, complete strangers, who will tell you straight up if it's a good idea, stupid idea, or a great idea, and offer that tweaks. I mentioned the client that went through the crowdfunding campaign, and that was sort of his response too, is that he just got all this amazing feedback. And so that really happens as you share. So how do you know if your product's working for your target audience? So there's some criteria for this. Is your product getting consistently high reviews and feedback? That's a great sign. So you're moving in the right direction if that's the case. So that's table stakes. Getting just right there, you have to have this number one thing. Are you maintaining positive ad spend as you scale? So are you being able to acquire new customers? And we're talking about the beginning of the scaling process, and we'll get into more of this as we get towards the end of the presentation. But as you're sort of scaling up, are you able to maintain your positive ad spend? And there's a lot of things that go into that, whether your marketing messaging is right, and that again points to the audience and product fit and audience match, right? Are you putting your product in front of the right audience, the right customers? But this is a good indication. Your repeat customer rate is going up. So you have these repeat buyers, and we're going to talk a lot about that at the end of the presentation as well. And are you getting organic growth beyond paid channels? Again, another way that referral traffic becomes a big thing for you, like people are talking about it on social. There's ways you can engineer that as well, which we'll talk about. But overall, your organic growth is increasing. So these are some ways that you're validating the product market fit and that you're improving your product in the marketplace. A couple additional thoughts to keep in mind when you're thinking about your product or you're trying to launch your next product or scale a product. Selecting products with high margins becomes really, really important, because that margin is really what gives you the profit and the cash flow in order to continue to scale. So if you have a really thin margins on your product, that means you have to do a lot of volume. And a lot of volume means you either have to have a really big customer base or a really big audience. So, if you're an influencer or you already have a huge audience or a big email list, or, you have a big YouTube following, you can launch, lower margin products because you'll get the volume and you'll get the cheap traffic, at least at the beginning. There will be a limit to that. But if you can, try to focus on high margin products because it's going to make your job a whole lot easier as you try to go to scale and grow your customer base. And then selecting products that are consumables. So not just a single purchase. If you can sell products that are reusable or are consumable, in the fact that you can sell them again and again and again within a relatively short time frame, that's going to also be a massive benefit to you, because that's going to improve that lifetime value, which we will also talk about at the end of the presentation. But keeping these two things in mind as you develop your products and your product mix and strategies are really, really crucial. All right, so must have number one. You must have a proven product that your audience wants or needs. You got to have that. And so that's number one. Number two is a clear value proposition. Now, you might have a really amazing product, but you may not be very clear on how you're positioning that product to your audience. And this is also important. So what is a value proposition? Basically, it's what you are promising to deliver to your customers post-purchase. It's the experience that you promise to give them, the outcome, the result of using your product, the result of working with your brand, the result of buying from you. It's ultimately what makes your product attractive, what makes your brand attractive to your ideal customer. So here's another way to define this. This is my simple definition. And it's your value proposition is the reason someone would buy from your website. After doing a lot of coaching, look at a lot of Shopify stores, talking with a lot of e-commerce sellers, one of the fundamental questions that does not get answered when someone is trying to really grow and launch and scale up their Shopify store or their brand in general is answering this question. Why should someone buy from your website? And you have to answer that. That really becomes your ultimate value proposition. And to scale, it has to be crystal clear to your customer. They have to have no confusion about why they're on your site and what they need to do when they're there. So here's some criteria. A compelling value proposition really covers three things. What are the specific benefits your target customer will receive? So answering these questions. How will your product or brand fix their customer's problem or improve their life? Again, this is somewhat related to the product and validating your product. So we're just getting clear on how we're communicating that to our customers. How is it both desirable and exclusive? So, and how does it highlight your competitive advantage and set you apart from your competitors? So this is more than just like a tagline. It's really at the core of why your brands and your product even exist. And by sort of answering these questions clearly in your own mind and then communicating that in your marketing will be crucial in really establishing a clear value proposition for your customer. Oh, sorry. Here we go. Okay, so the clear value proposition. Another way to think about value proposition is Andy Dunn, who's the founder of Bonobos, serial entrepreneur and an angel investor. He has basically 4 P's that he talks about. And this really, and the context of this was really how you compete with against Amazon in building direct-to-consumer e-commerce brands. And so his 4 Ps are really interesting, and these actually help sort of help solidify, I think, a little bit value proposition. And he has 4 buckets, 4 strategies: proprietary pricing, proprietary selection, proprietary experience, and proprietary merchandise. And as you're thinking about answering the questions that I just posed in those couple slides before, these strategies help you to sort of solidify those answers, I think. So let's break it down. Proprietary pricing models. This is a strategy that uses price to basically create value and uniqueness in a market. A great example of this are flash sale sites, which use pricing and these limited time frames to incent buyers. Now, the classic pricing strategy for this was, eBay auctions back in the day, and that out of that grew a whole lot of e-commerce brands that really begin to adopt this style. Like Zulily here in Seattle, it's a $1 billion brand that I think they were purchased by QVC not too long ago, or a few years back. And they are built totally on this flash sale model where they will have deals up for a day or just a limited amount of time, and they train their customers to return to the site to get the best deals. Now, if you're training your customers to come back to your website again and again and again, you are on the right path, because your customer acquisition cost will be so much cheaper to get people to re-engage because they're expecting to come back to get the best deals over time. So Zulily was one. Outlook was another one as well. They were bought by Nordstrom a few years back, and kind of combined with Nordstrom Rack, but they're an example of flash sale sites that are using proprietary pricing models in order to gain competitive advantage and offer a very clear value proposition. Another one is proprietary selection. So in this strategy, it's about being narrow and deep for a particular audience. This is where niche strategies come into play. So you don't necessarily have to be exclusive products to just your website, but it can feel very exclusive for three interesting reasons. The depth of your assortment, the difficulty in finding these products elsewhere. So you're sort of curating these products for a particular niche and making it really super easy for them to access. And then the power of kind of creating these sort of niche communities around a particular niche is really, really cool. And so proprietary selection sort of helps foster those things, and it's perfect for sort of niche and niche branding. Examples of this are ModCloth. I mean, they were a brand that I think at one point were sold by or bought by Walmart. I think Walmart sold it since then. But and then also Jason Cinnamon's brand, Pixie Fair, is a niche marketplace designed for the doll clothes patterns in sewing. So it's like a sub niche of a sub niche, and they have a proprietary selection. They have 4,000 different products. Some of them are unique and exclusive. Others are sold. You can find them in other places, but just the ease of that access on Pixie Fair allows them to sort of maintain that competitive advantage. And then a proprietary experience. So this strategy is all about adding unique customer experience or delivery methodologies. So think of the subscription box service or digital products and physical products hybrid. So if you have a training or a course that you're providing a unique customer experience. And often these are often also driven by brands that are driven by like maybe a celebrity. So if you see influencer brands driving stuff like, for example, Kylie Cosmetics, that was a cosmetics brand that literally just built on an influencer and is driving a ton of revenue just based on that. Birchbox and Shoe Dazzle are both subscription box services as well that offer you a unique buying experience and delivery methodology. So that unique experience is what gives a clear value proposition to the customer. And then proprietary merchandise. So this is, the classic when you think about e-commerce, but it's a company that really builds an offering and doesn't make it available anywhere else other than through that brand. So Bonobos is an example of that, the men's clothing line. And that becomes harder and harder, though, too, as you scale, because it's harder for brands to ignore Amazon as a sales channel, but then that opens up the whole just competing on Amazon. But if you own the brand and you owned the distribution, that helps you sort of maintain sort of that brand protection and brand ownership a little bit. And there's strategies around that as well. Maybe you don't offer all of your products on Amazon, but you keep some of your products or a majority of your products available only on your website, and you really use Amazon as a sales channel to get sort of top of the funnel brand awareness and to be protected on that platform. So proprietary merchandise, though, is one way and one value proposition that you can use as well. So with all that, though, no matter which strategy or even combination of those strategies you're bringing together to answer those questions about what you bring uniquely to the market and why people should shop from you, all of these different strategies are in essence really expressed and solidified in your branding. And having a strong brand is definitely an important requirement for scaling. If you don't have a strong brand, your marketing messaging will be not nearly as effective. Your clarity on your value proposition will not be as effective. And you will spend more money to acquire your customers because you're not going to be as memorable with them in their mind. The stickiness of returning customers and the customer rate won't be as strong. So even if you have a great product and you have a clear value proposition, you have to make sure you weave that together in creating a strong brand. So one of the things I wanted to mention is an unannounced bonus. So you're watching this, you haven't yet upgraded to All Access Pass. I haven't even announced this yet, but if you do, not only will you get our Shopify Power course to get access to it, but you'll also get I'm throwing in our branding for e-commerce course as a bonus. So it has 3 hours of training on branding your e-commerce store. You'll get that if you upgrade to All Access Pass. So a whole other 3 hours on branding. So I'm not going to go into a bunch of detail into that right now, but that is an option for you for sure to go ahead and do. So I would encourage you to do that if you want to build out your brand even more. You can kind of see the different topics that are covered in that course on the screen there as well. So side note, we're back in it. So must have number 2. You must have a clear value proposition for your customer, and they need a reason to shop at your store. You fundamentally have to solve that. And just having a good product cannot be the reason. You have to go deeper than that, and you have to go beyond that. You can use some of those 4P strategies, but you definitely have to get clarity on this in order to scale your store. All right, number 3, an optimized store. In order to scale any store, whether it's Shopify or any website, it needs to be optimized for conversion and sales. And there are really 2 areas that you need to be focused on. There are a lot more. This is a very deep topic, but I want to kind of just touch on some of the low-hanging fruit. And those are site speed and persuasive design. So the reason why site speed is important is because it really has an impact on your bounce rate. And your bounce rate, in essence, is a term in analytics that represents the percentage of visitors who enter your site and then leave, rather than continuing to view other pages or take an action on that page or on that same site. And if the data that's out there from Google and different conversion applications say that 40% of people will abandon a page if it takes more than 3 seconds to fully load and make it actionable. So if your site speed is taking longer than that, you're at least 40% of the people are just automatically going to be out of there. And so the goal of improving your site speed is really to counter your bounce rate so that people will stay on your website a little bit longer and kind of see what that value proposition, what your product is, and all that clear messaging is that you've really sort of dialed in. Now, it's very easy to miss this because oftentimes your website is cached on your machine because you've been to it before, you're checking it out, and so it loads fast for you. But new people coming in to your site, it might actually load slow because it's not yet cached. So you have to be aware of that when you're talking and thinking about site speed for your store. All right, so talked about a little bit of the benefit of reducing bounce rate. Let's do the math and show you the financial benefit of reducing your bounce rate. So let's look at the average cost per visitor. Say, for example, if you pay for 1,000 visitors to go to your website and you're on average paying 50 cents per click, so it's $500. And if 90% of those visitors bounce on landing, then you have 1,000 visitors that you're paying for to click at 50 cents per click, so it's $500. But if 90% or 900 of them actually bounce, this is a really high bounce rate, but just say, for example, if 90% of them bounced, then you actually only had 100 visitors that stayed on your site and took some level of action. And so at 100 visitors at $500, your true cost is actually $5 per visitor. So you might think, oh, I'm only spending 50 cents per click, but in reality, you're actually spending $5 per visitor. So it can get, much more expensive. Okay. So if you reduce the bounce rate by 10%, then you're still paying for the 1,000 visitors to go to your site. It's still paying 50 cents per click, so you still spent that $500. But if you reduce it by only 10%, now 80% of those visitors bounce, then that 1,000 visitors you thought you had going to the site, which you had clicks for, you had actually had 200 visitors show up because you only had an 80% bounce rate at 500, your true cost is then $2.50 per visitor. So you dropped your cost per visitor by 50% by just reducing the bounce rate by 10%. So little tweaks can make a big difference in your optimized store and your site speed and your conversion metrics on your store. So really, really powerful when you start to think about the difference that little bit of just optimization can make to your store. Now, you can expand this out. Maybe you spend a lot more than $500 on your advertising, and so this may have a much bigger impact for you and your bottom line. So here's some ways to improve your site speed to get that bounce rate lower. Your images and your media. So one thing that you want to make sure you're doing is you're compressing your high resolution images, your product images, your lifestyle images on your homepage, because those high resolution images or larger images take longer to load. So you want to make sure that they're properly sized and that they are compressed. And if you're using for new images, you can try using what I like is tinypng.com or tinyjpeg.com for free, and it will just reduce the size of your images you upload, and then you can put them back up on the store or load them for the first time. You can also do it in like Photoshop and different things like that too. You can compress it if you're just exporting it at a smaller size or smaller resolution. And then for existing images on a Shopify store, if you have, say you have a store and it's already up and running and you got a bunch of products and you're like, oh man, I don't want to try and do that manually. There are apps you can do like crush.pix or Image Optimizer to compress the files without any quality loss, and it'll just go through all of your website and just do that for you automatically. But that's really one of the first things to look at when you are when you're trying to improve your site speed is the images that you have on the site. Another ways that you can improve your site speed is by streamlining the number of elements on the page. We'll talk a little bit more in the next section, but you want to limit your design aesthetic. So making sure you're very streamlined in the amount of elements that you have. So don't overload a page. If you can do more with less, do more with less. Because the more things you have to load, the slower your site's going to be. You also want to reduce the number of scripts. So if you're using a lot of JavaScript on your site, you want to try to reduce that as much as possible. It kind of be technical. You might need a developer to help you with this step and process. And you also want to try to make sure you're placing that at the bottom of the page and not at the top of your site. So you might need your developer to help you with this, and it can be a little bit more of an advanced thing, but it's something to definitely keep an eye on. You also want to reduce the number of apps you have installed on your store. The more apps you have on a Shopify store, the more calls to those app servers that your site has to make while it loads. And so having them will be slowing down your site, particularly if they're apps you no longer are using. So if you're not using an app, make sure you uninstall it, and also make sure that code is successfully removed out of your store. And if you need to, I would contact the app developers themselves, or work with your own web developer to make sure that those apps and all that code is successfully removed and not still slowing your site down, even after you've uninstalled the app. And then make sure you're using a fast Shopify theme. Like do your homework. Look for a fast theme that works well and it's not sort of overloaded with a bunch of extra stuff you don't really need. And that will also make a big improvement on ways to improve your Shopify site speed. The next thing that we want to make sure that we're doing is, sorry about that. So the next thing, number 2, was persuasive design. And the goal of persuasive design is to clearly communicate why people are on your site. Goes, again, back to your value proposition and getting really clear on that, incorporating that into your brand, and then incorporating that into the design elements that are on your site. This will improve your conversion rate. Google did a study on website design, and it was really, really fascinating because they said visually complex websites are consistently rated less beautiful than simpler counterparts. And oftentimes customers sort of judge your site based on a beauty or how well it looks visually. And it will have a big impact on your conversion rate. If your site is perceived to be more beautiful than another site, then you have less bounce. People stick around and they want to see your site. And moreover, highly prototypical sites, so sites with layouts that are commonly associated with sites in your category that also had a simple design, were rated the most beautiful. So the more effective your site is at being simplified, with less, psychologists call it cognitive load. You want to remove the ability and need for people to process a lot of information on your website. It needs to be really, really clear why they're here and what they should do next. And that is part of the core fundamentals of persuasive design. So there are 5 design principles that you can keep in mind as you optimize your stores. Again, we're talking about some high level stuff, but these are important principles to really sort of think about as you continue to scale. 1, clarity above all, simple and familiar. So don't do anything too radical in terms of your design that falls way outside the norms of other e-commerce sites in your industry. Be aware of that. If you need a good example, just look at Amazon. I mean, they're split testing everything. They understand what that looks like, and you wouldn't even necessarily consider Amazon to be super simple, but definitely that is what people are used to when shopping online. So clarity, simplicity, familiarity, and then strong visual appeal. So you want to make sure that you have a strong visual. It looks good. It needs to look good. Can't look bad. It needs to look in line with your what your expectations your customers would have if they were shopping on a competitor's store. Strong visual hierarchies. So meaning that you need to basically understand that the bigger the item is on, or the bigger the element, picture, text, whatever it is on your store, the more importance it should have. So a call to action at the top of your page, which would you call above the fold. So anything above the fold on your site is what people see without having to scroll. So having a strong visual hierarchy means that those most important things are above the fold and are a clear call to action or a clear value proposition or statement that is designed with the most important things being the largest on your page and then getting smaller as they reduce in importance. So that's visual hierarchy. And you can do some Google searching around visual hierarchies as well. It'll go into more depth and detail on it, but really just keeping in mind the biggest things are at the top, the most important things are at the top, and they're usually the biggest things on your site. And then you want to conserve attention at all costs. So meaning you want to make your bullet points, any sort of content you have, scannable. Meaning someone can just read it by scanning it, because 80% of your customers are just going to be like scanning your page. They're not going to really dump too far into it. So really avoid big blocks of text. Make sure you're breaking text up with headlines or subheadlines or graphical elements or some sort of bolding or break up your text so it doesn't look like big walls of text, because you want to conserve energy. You want to make it scanning friendly. Use bullet points. Oftentimes you'll see a headline, a subheadline, and maybe 3 bullet points as being one of the basic standards practices for something that's easily scanned. And then the other thing from design principle is you only want one action per screen. So and it needs to be appropriate. So what I mean by one action is there should only be one call to action per screen that someone's on. So ideally, if they're on a home page, it would be to learn more or explore a category or check out a product. If you have a product featured on your home page, you're going to be making it only visible on that one screen, like at the top of the fold, so that they don't have to scroll down. At the top of your homepage, there should only be one call to action. If you scroll down, you can have more calls to action because they're technically going to be on a different screen as they're scrolling, but only one call to action per screen, and it needs to be appropriate to where they're at in the customer buying journey. So the homepage may not necessarily want to say buy this now. I mean, you might if you're running a sale or something, but maybe if you're running a sale, it's like check this out, check out more details, learn more. And so they're clicking in and maybe it goes to a landing page or something that's talking about your sale or something that you're promoting currently on the site. Obviously, if you're on a product page, it should be buy now or add to cart, right? So those call to actions are appropriate to where they're at in the buying decision, the buying cycle on your site. Okay, so jumped into the weeds a little bit, but it's important to be thinking about how you optimize your store, because if you have an unoptimized store and you're trying to run traffic, you're trying to grow your sales, you're going to have a boat with holes in it, and you're going to have a lot of leaks. And unless you start plugging those leaks, you really can't successfully scale, or you can, but you're going to be wasting a lot of money and time and energy in the process and giving people bad customer experiences. So an optimized store is a must-have, and it needs to be fast, and it needs to be designed for customer experience and for conversion. And again, this is a growth process. The growth is really measured over time. It's measured by you taking consistent action on these things. You shouldn't expect to have all 4 of these things mastered in a weekend, and you definitely aren't going to be able to master this on one training in this summit. Like this, I'm just trying to hopefully highlight these areas for you to go deeper in as you continue to work on scaling up and really push into. But an optimized store definitely is a must-have. All right, so this fun little formula, the customer acquisition cost being less than lifetime value. And that is the formula that you need to memorize and love and really get familiar with, because this is really going to drive your success or failure as you grow your business. Let's break this down a little bit more and get more detail and clarity on it. So customer acquisition cost is pretty much exactly how it sounds, and it's how much you spent on marketing per customer, particularly over a period of time. So whether that's 30 days or 12 months or 3 years, you are looking at taking all your marketing costs and dividing it by the number of customers acquired in that time frame, and that gives you that number. So, for example, if you spent $1,000 on marketing in a year and you acquired 500 customers in that same year, your customer acquisition cost is going to be $2. Now, the average customer acquisition cost, it's going to vary from niche to niche, and it's really even going to vary per advertising channel that you're using. So, organic search might give you a lower customer acquisition cost than paid search or paid social media like Facebook. So be aware of that. It's going to be different across the board. Now, lifetime value, it's also referred to as CLV. You'll still see LTV and CLV, but they're pretty much the same thing. Represents the total amount of money a customer is expected to spend with you during their lifetime. And how you calculate that is the average order value times the frequency of purchase times the retention time period. So in essence, it kind of looks like this. You have your lifetime value here, the average value of a sale, your average order volume, times the number of transactions on average your user makes given a time period. So whether that's a month, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. If you're just starting out and you're just starting to scale, you may not have a really accurate picture of what the total lifetime retention time period is for your customer. But you just kind of have to use the best data that you have. So if you've only been in business for a year or two, you only have 2 years of really data to look at and see what that looks like. But that gives you that number. So why these numbers matter? Because as you scale, you're eventually going to tap out demand. You know, depending on the size of your niche and where you're at, there is a hard limit of where you can sort of scale your advertising for front-end acquisition. Because what will happen is you'll have acquired all of the cheapest customers in your niche that there are to acquire. That will eventually happen. And you might be a long ways away from that, but nevertheless, it is something you will have to face. Your marginal, and as that happens, your marginal cost of acquisition is going to continue to go up, and then growth becomes unprofitable at that point, because now that customer acquisition cost is going to be greater than the value that your customer brings to your business over time. And the other thing that happens is success invites competition. Maybe either you've sort of created your own niche or you're having success in a niche, but the bigger that you get, it invites competitors to try to compete with you. But then the bigger the niche that you try to market into will also mean more competition, and usually bigger fish, bigger the niche, usually bigger the fish, and usually they're going to have much bigger budgets as well to operate out of. So what this ultimately looks like and can be also defined is the law of diminishing returns. And this means that when you're early on in your business, you're going to be scaling because you're acquiring cheaper customers. And this is true of your business as a whole, but it also is true of the marketing channels in which you're operating in. So say, for example, you start out with Google Shopping or Facebook ads, and you're acquiring new customers and you're acquiring new customers. Eventually, that's going to start to curve, like your growth curve starts to flatten out and your results start to dip. Your customer acquisition costs go up, your cost per click start to go up because you've acquired the cheapest customers early on. And then at some point, you've reached the point of maximum potential, and now you start to see negative returns. So what also that means is, like, for the more money that you spend in your budget, you can continue to push money into it, but at some point you can spend more money than what's actually generating you a positive return, and you'll actually start losing ROI and return on ad spend as you do that. And so the law of diminishing returns is a very real factor as you scale, and it needs to be something you're aware of in your marketing. So for scaled growth, must have number 4, you must have a system that generates cheap reorders and cheap reacquisition of customers, because that's the most effective way to keep your customer acquisition costs below the lifetime value that your customer provides. So let's jump into some ways that we can do that. And as we mentioned, as you scale, your costs definitely can go up, but there are some strategies to implement to lower those customer acquisition costs. One is you want to shift your focus from going after the initial sale to acquiring leads. So one of the things that we tend to do early on in our business is that we try to focus immediately on the front end sale. We're trying to get that person to buy. All of our advertising is like, get my first time buyer. I'm optimizing for a purchase on Facebook, or I'm trying to get a particular ROAS on Google in my ad spend. And it's all focused on the sale component. But what you can do to shift that and to diversify that out is actually work on acquiring a lead. So it's not someone who has actually bought from you, but it's actually somebody who's joined your email list, it's connected with you on social media, and that actually will become a cheaper acquisition cost. Now, you still have to use other channels in order to convert that potential customer, like email marketing or SMS marketing, or even additional paid traffic strategies or content strategies that you have to in essence pay for. But it can be a cheaper way to get them into your funnel, and then also a cheaper customer acquisition cost to use email marketing or SMS marketing or something along those lines to then convert them. So you can also use contests and giveaways or challenges at the front end of your funnel. This is a really, really popular way to get top of funnel traffic. Now, however, not all brands, not all contests and giveaways are created equal. It does, just because you create one doesn't mean that you're going to have a high converting customer. So you do have to be careful how you engineer these, and also make sure that you are trying to target your target audience and not go too broad with your contests or giveaways, because you will definitely have people joining your contests and joining your giveaways in order to try and win and get free stuff, but they never would actually be your target audience and target buyer, and therefore they will never convert for you and become a true buyer. So that is a disadvantage using the strategy, but it's still a powerful strategy to gain market share, to gain awareness, and to lower your customer acquisition cost in any market that you're going in. You just have to engineer them appropriately. Also use digital products as front-end offers. So the nice thing about a digital product is that it's near zero marginal cost, because once you develop your digital product, you can continue to resell that product again and again and again and again. And you don't have any customer or cost of goods sold, right? There's no COGS necessarily outside of the initial cost to produce it on a product. Unlike a physical product, if you're using it as a front-end offer, you have to replace that physical product every time you sell it. And so there's a cost of goods associated with that. So using digital products as a front-end offer will help lower some of your costs. Now, that doesn't necessarily impact your customer acquisition costs as it does impact your overall margin, but it does play into it. And you can be a little more effective with, lowering your price point on a digital product, which could incent a higher conversion rate, thereby lowering your customer acquisition cost. For example, like an e-course or some sort of training or ebooks or something along those lines. And it's something to test. And then number 4, you can build communities around your product, brand, or niche. So this is a really powerful way. So if you can develop communities around solving your product or solving an issue that your product solves, now you have an audience. And that audience will be a much cheaper, because they'll begin to know, like, and trust you as being part of your community. An example, this would be like VIP communities or something like that, where there is just interaction. And then not only are you selling into those communities, but then also your customers and your super fans, your brand ambassadors that are in those communities will actually help solidify and actually do some of the selling for you. So that's another powerful way to sort of lower your customer acquisition costs. So instead of going after initial sale, you're actually just asking them for a commitment to be involved in a community that's something that they're already looking for or trying to solve or be connected with. So quick pause here, because I also want to say that we're also including another unannounced bonus. This is new. Nobody has heard about this yet. So if I'm also including our social contest course and an influencer marketing masterclass course as a bonus for anyone who has All Access Pass. So if you already got All Access Pass, you're going to get 3 additional courses on top of the Shopify Power, which is sort of an overview of Shopify and how to build out your store that we're including in All Access Pass. So if you haven't picked up All Access Pass yet for the summit, I highly encourage you. You'll be able to go back and get access to all of the trainings and all of the speakers. Plus, I'm throwing in these 2 additional courses on top of the branding course and Shopify Power that will be available as a bonus. So the commercial's over, so we'll keep going. So over time, your customer acquisition cost will rise to the point where it's equal to your lifetime value as you scale. And at that point, it's time to start really working diligently on the lifetime value to achieve stable, predictable growth. And you can obviously be working on your lifetime value at any time, but a lot of times we just don't think about it when we're early on in our growth phase, because it's all about acquiring customers. It's all about sort of getting revenue and focusing on that sale. But if you don't make that switch soon enough in your business, it'll start to result in stagnant cash flow. And if you start seeing that stagnant cash flow occur, it might be a really powerful sign for you to really be focusing on increasing lifetime value of your customer. This was a great quote by W. Clement Stone, who's an insurance guy for long, and he had this quote that says, "Little hinges swing big doors," and it's a really great quote. And it totally holds true on when you're talking about conversion optimization, when you're talking about increasing your LTV, because increasing that lifetime value will be the biggest multiplier to your bottom line in your business. And it will be some of the little hinges that will swing big doors of increased profitability and cash flow. So there are 2 main multipliers that you can begin to work on to improve your lifetime value. One is you increase your customer purchase frequency, and you also increase your average order value. And so let's look at some tactics and strategies for doing that. So you remember lifetime value, the little graphic here. When we're talking about increasing our customer purchase frequency, what we're talking about is really increasing the number of transactions per customer. And then when we're increasing our average order value, we're really focusing on driving that, getting that number higher per transaction. So increasing the number of transactions per customer and increasing the amount spent per transaction is really the multipliers that we're looking for to improve lifetime value. So how do we do this? So customer purchase frequency is often influenced by three main drivers. Your product itself, right? Because we talked about the importance of having a proven product that people want, and the more demand is in it for your product, the easier it is for people to buy it again or to refer other people to it. So your product has to be really the best, highest quality you can, and needs to be delivering on its promise to the customer. Your customer experience, so how they interact with your website. Again, talked about the value proposition being super important and clear to your customers. So, and then also your site being optimized for your customer experience, from design, from site speed. Really, those things all are sort of factoring in to the customer experience. And it even comes down to your support. What kind of customer support are you providing? All of those have impact in that as well. And then your marketing. So those are the three main drivers that are going to influence customer purchase frequency. So here's some tactics that we can use to increase this frequency. One is we can lead with our best products. So make sure your best products are the ones that are featured on your website and in your marketing, the one that have the biggest demand, that people are buying the most. Just put your best foot forward. And sometimes we forget about that and we don't do it. And so just as a top of mind reminder, lead with your best. Second, add a subscription or auto renew option to your store. So if in the case where you have a consumable product, adding in a subscription or auto renew option is an amazing way to increase customer purchase frequency, because in essence you're automating it. You're not even, I mean, you're reminding, you don't have to remind them with marketing. You're just auto billing them in the process. So there's a great app called Recharge, which is a subscription app on Shopify that you can use to set up for your products. And that's a great option for you to sort of dig in and start to begin to do that. Now, if you don't currently have products that really support a consumable, renewable product, that would be a great opportunity for you to sort of push into that level of product development and thinking, how can you add this on? And it could even be a digital product. You could use a membership program or something digital that is also a subscription or auto renew option for your store as well. Add a loyalty program. So there are apps like S Loyalty and Rise and GrowWave and Yotpo and Stamped that will basically reward points for purchases, and you can unlock all of these things. So one of the ways that you can sort of really create that customer experience, right, that we talked about before, is by incentivizing a loyalty program. Now, Amazon Prime was a great example of a loyalty program that's probably the biggest out there, but those they work. And so adding loyalty programs to your site, incentivizing people to buy from your website, because you might have a model where your products are available on other platforms like Amazon or Etsy or Walmart or eBay, but if your loyalty program is unique to your website. And so if you engineer it in a way that really incentivizes that, once your fans and your customers know about it and it's providing them real value, they're going to come back again and shop from your store, because that's really where the only way they can get access to this loyalty program. So it's a great way to increase purchase frequency on your Shopify store. And then number 4, you want to create post-purchase marketing campaigns. So again, oftentimes we only lead with the top of the funnel first purchase as our marketing campaigns and don't really think too heavily about our post-purchase marketing campaigns. But to increase purchase frequency, you need to really be thinking through some post-purchase marketing campaigns and what that might look like. And here are an example of some to sort of begin to optimize. So your order receipt automation email that comes out, that's something to look at. Is there ways that you can optimize that campaign to make an offer or a cross-sell, which we'll talk about here in a minute, in your order receipt? Shipping confirmation, again, another touch point that you can optimize, make it less robotic sounding or looking and add some more life to it. So shipping confirmation, product review, emails and campaigns, feedback communication. So getting surveys from customers is another powerful way to sort of optimize and make a connection and really make another offer in that process. Replenishment communication. And again, if you have a renewable or a consumable product, making sure that you're touching base with people when it's time to rebuy. And again, I mentioned VIP and loyalty programs. Again, these are campaigns putting people into those programs with your marketing. So after they purchase, making sure that they understand you have a VIP program or a loyalty program, and just telling people about it more effectively. And then win back campaigns. So if someone hasn't purchased from you in a specific amount of time, what kind of email marketing or SMS marketing or even paid advertising to get back in front of them are you doing with those campaigns? So again, these are just a short list of the ways that you can sort of think about marketing campaigns post-purchase. And really, this is going to be probably the best converting campaigns that you're going to have. It's going to be much easier to get someone to buy again from you than it will be to actually acquire a brand new customer. It's going to be much cheaper. So now let's talk about ways to increase the average order value. So increasing your average order value, there's a couple different tactics to keep in mind. The first and foremost, and the simplest one, is just test increasing your price. So test a 15% bump in price and see what happens. I mean, this is something that we tried even on Amazon in our store, where we split test our pricing, and we were able to raise our price, I think, by $1.20, and had no impact on our sales velocity, but it definitely dropped right to our bottom line because it was just increasing our profitability. So increase testing your prices for sure. Increase the quantities that you offer. I mean, Costco is probably the most famous example of that. And they don't offer anything but volume pricing and volume quantity. And so maybe having more options for quantities on your, instead of a 1-pack, offer a 2-pack. It's kind of similar to bundling, but you increase your quantities, or you can offer a volume discount on your store as well. So if people are buying more, it will actually reduce their price. And in essence, you're getting economies of scale working in your advantage, because if the more that they're buying in quantity, the cheaper the shipping typically will be for you. And the less customers, you're doing more units per order, which it technically could lower other fixed costs as well, like customer service inquiries and all that kind of stuff as you start to scale up. So getting more units through per order, increasing quantities is definitely a win for you in that standpoint. And again, adding bundles, which I mentioned, it's an Amazon strategy for some sellers to just kind of create bundles that work for the customers. They'll work on your store as well. So putting things together in that way, making that available, will increase your average order value for sure. Offering financing options. This was really interesting because recently I was we're working on some stuff with clients and looking at using live selling on like Facebook Live and stuff like that to sell products. And one of the things that we kind of noticed was the Home Shopping Network and some of their live stuff that they do. And if you've ever watched the Home Shopping Network, one of the fascinating things about it is they'll sell a $20 product, but they'll offer a 4-payment plan of $4.95. So they're giving payment plan options for even low-end products. And I think it's interesting, something to test, offering different financing options. And there are definitely apps that you can plug into Shopify that'll let you do that. Sometimes you have to be, you have to qualify for them, and maybe your pricing of your products would be, too high if you're selling a high-end product. That may not let you do that. But you can also do a split pay option. So basically, the customer makes all the payments before you actually ship the product. So that's an option to play around with as well. And it doesn't necessarily increase, it can increase the average order value if you're able to bundle those together a little bit more, but it also might increase just the conversion rate and the customer buying frequency if they have those options available for them as well. Another way to do that is live customer support. So, now, if you're scaling up and you have a small team, you may not want to do this one right away. But once you start to get to scale and you can afford to have a team, offering a live chat or 800 number, typically any sort of pre-sale customer engagement will result in a higher conversion rate and typically a higher average order value, because now they know, like, and trust you even more, and they're willing to spend more money with you if they're talking to somebody from your team or you're offering some sort of support in that way. So something to keep in mind. May not be for everybody right away, but as you scale up and you want to increase your average order value, that is a proven way to do it. And then upsells and cross-sells. This is probably one of the faster ways you can start to increase your average order value. Also, let me just say this as well before I skip it, and I didn't add this to my list, but offering incentives for average order value increases, like free shipping thresholds, is another way that you can increase your average order value. So you can kind of bonus people into free shipping by hitting a certain threshold of your average order value. So one tactic, I didn't include this on my slides, but is to look at what your current average order value is and maybe up it by $5 or $10 and make that your new free shipping threshold, and then see if that's improving your average order value on your store. But another classic way to do that is upsells and cross-sells. And so cross-selling is when you invite your customer to buy a related product or a complementary item. Upselling is when you encourage customers to purchase a comparable but higher-end item. And so Amazon actually reported that 35% of its revenue came from cross-selling and upselling. So it's definitely a proven model for increasing average order value. And so if Amazon's doing it, I would highly recommend you start to explore that in your store as well. And there's some apps you can definitely use for that. One-click upsell is one, and so is Bold product upsell. And both those allow you to sort of build both cross-sell, upsell funnels into Shopify, and it's a really effective way to sort of get that set up and running on your store. And then last tactic is adding a premium service or concierge level sort of plan to your store and to your product offering. So you can partner with or create your own premium service as an upsell. So for example, Warby Parker now offers eye exams in their location. So they used to be selling glasses, and now since they've opened up physical locations, they've been partnering with service providers to actually offer eye exams as well as an extension of what they're doing. So Stitch Fix also offers customized user experiences. So here's an example of what they have. When you go to their site, really, it's like, here's what you get to do. You get clothing hand selected by our expert stylist. So it's a unique experience. So it's a proprietary experience if you think about the 4P model that we talked about before. And then they get it's hand selected, and you instantly buys the items are curated just for your style. So you're basically skipping the browsing and discovery of pieces curated for you. They're doing it for you based on the profiles that you set up, right? And so then they're going to ask you questions like, how often do you want to shop? You know, all these different entry level questions to kind of get you ready to sign up. And then once you're signing up, you know, they're asking you how's you filling out a profile so that they can then shop for you in a concierge level. And this experience is providing more value to you as the customer, ideally. So you could think about and adding those types of level of experiences to your store as a way to increase your average order value. Now, most early growth brands spend 80% of their time and money on first-time buyer acquisition. And that is a growth killing mistake. You have to really be thinking about lifetime value and lowering your customer acquisition costs as you scale, and implementing that in order to really get the cash flow that will empower you to continue to move everything forward. So, quick review. 4 things you must have in order to scale. You need a proven product or business model that your audience wants or needs. 2, you need a clear value proposition. Your customer needs a reason to shop at your store. 3, you need an optimized store, and it's a store that's fast and designed for customer experience and conversion. And 4, you need to make sure that you're acquiring customers for less than your lifetime value of that customer. And how you do that is by building systems that generate cheap reorders and cheap reacquisition of customers, so that you're not overspending on acquiring your customers. So with that, those are the 4 things you must have to scale. Again, I want to just recap for you real quick. Bonus for all access. We're throwing in a Shopify Power Course for going deeper on Shopify and building out your store. Branding. We talked a little bit about branding, but this course really goes into detail on e-commerce branding. And then social contests, which is a great way to lower your customer acquisition costs, and influencer marketing, which is another really highly effective way to do that. Once you do that, those are all included in bonus access. So I just want to say thanks. It was a pleasure to be speaking at the summit. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up inside the summit group. I'll be in there, and I look forward to connecting with you in the future. And I hopefully you're implementing these tactics and strategies as you continue to scale your store. And remember, this is a process, and it's a journey, and it's going to take you time, but it's time worth spent. So good luck with scaling your Shopify store, and we will talk again soon. Thanks.